I'm Mars. I am 26. I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, am I still 23? I don't. I've like lost
Understandable.
years in there. I just moved to New York City. I'm originally from California. I'm in Brooklyn right now, but who knows what's next? It,
Oh, relationship
yeah,
type?
relationship type. I definitely lean more non-monogamous. That's like becoming more and more important to me as I go on, and I think, um, yeah, that's like important in the sense that I am not super jealous or like I experience jealousy, but I like when my partner can basically do not like literally whatever they want, but just that we can each have like a wide range of experiences or a wide range of relationships without feeling like we have to give up our connection that we have with each other.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, do you prefer like having sort of a primary partner and the relationship's like pretty open as opposed to like going for a polycule type of thing or
Yeah, I think probably my ideal would be having a primary partner, even one that eventually we would live together and things like that. Um, but I would also, but anything from, me or my partner having like a casual relationship, anything from that to having a full on other primary relationship, if they have the room for that, then I would be happy with that.
Okay, cool, cool. Okay, so yeah, what brought you to New York?
I So I lived in California my whole life. I was in Southern California, then I moved up to the Bay Area, and I've always wanted to move to New York or at least like live here for some period of time because I'm really into theater and I'm really into fashion, and I felt like those are two two big things that New York is known for. And also I do not like driving. And I like having a lot of stuff to do. I'm like a very um, I'm okay with staying home sometimes and, relaxing and resting a certain amount, but ideally, I would kind of be doing what I'm doing now, which is, I have one thing in one part of the city and then take the train somewhere else and then do something else. And it's all like with a variety of people and places and kinds of things, whether it's like going from jujitsu to theater or from, you know, hanging out with friends to a writing group. Like I just like being able to kind of bounce around, and so I feel like New York would be a good place to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's much more conducive than LA where you're like, oh, I'll bounce around and spend like half an hour to an hour in traffic between each
Yeah,
stop.
it kind of slows your roll a little bit. You're like, okay, well now I don't really want to do it because I'm mad.
Yeah, seriously, right? You get there and you're just exhausted and want to go home.
Yeah.
It sounds like you've got like a bunch of like hobbies and interests and stuff. I'm curious about kind of all of them. So you say you do jujitsu, theater, you're into fashion and writing. Is there like
Yeah,
how do you fill your time up?
I have a lot of hobbies. That's like one of my favorite things to do is just like try try new stuff. Um, but I would say like the biggest one is theater. At least right now, I've been acting since I was like really little. I've always loved it. My parents saw me when I was a kid, and like although I was pretty shy, they were like, when she gets on stage or when she gets the chance to perform, she's on. And so we need to put her in something to channel that so it's not too annoying in real life. So
Yeah, annoying. Like it sounds like if you're shy, it wouldn't be that annoying, right? Or is it like
yeah, it would just come out in
I
in
see.
strange ways. So I think they were just like, okay, let's just get her off our hands for a little bit and see what she can do. And I think, yeah, I was involved with theater, musical theater mostly. And then in high school, I didn't really like the school plays that we were doing. We were doing like Our Town and stuff, which is like respectable, all that classical theater. But high school students did not like it. And so I was like, well, what if I write my own play? And so the teacher was like, well, if you do it, then we'll put it on. And so I ended up writing a play like right before my senior year, and we put it on. It was really fun. And that's what like started my interest in playwriting. So in theater, I like both acting and playwriting. I've also directed, which is still hit or miss for me.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, I do that, and it's easy to like overlap with, if I have a writing group or something, people are normally working on their novels and whatever, but I'll be working on my play, and so that's fun to connect with other writers in that way. Um, what else? Yeah, I'm into fashion too. I think that also ties into theater, and like at least my kind of flair for the dramatic comes out in fashion too. I like to kind of dress up as characters or try to communicate a vibe through an outfit. And I like to help other people figure out what that is for them too. So that's been something I've been working on, is like, how can I help other people with their personal style as well as my own. Um, and then jujitsu, I've been doing that uh, for, I would say, 2.5 years or so. Um, I've It's been like a lifelong journey to kind of like get out of my head and into my body. And I read about jujitsu being able to kind of alter your fight or flight response and just like make your body respond to things differently than they did in the past. And for me, I was very like frozen in my body for a long time, and I was like, I need something to bring me out of it. And I joined jujitsu to get me reconnected with my body, and it definitely has um, helped and been challenging because I've gotten pretty disciplined with it. Like if I'm doing nothing else, I'll usually go like 4 or 5 times a week,
Whoa.
but it's like very it's very challenging because you are fighting people every day, and some people love to fight, they have a lot of fun with it, but for me, I'm just like a gentle person, and so it's very confusing why I have this tendency to go toward the things that are like challenging or painful or uncomfortable a lot, but I feel like it's the only way that I really um I don't know, can feel alive and engaged with the world and like pushing myself. So
Yeah, that makes sense. That seems like a really good quality because I feel like a lot of people, it's like things make them nervous and they're like, all right, that's my limit. I'm just going to stay over here in the corner and enjoy stuff. But it seems like you just want to have a lot of experiences and not be like limited by being nervous about things.
yeah, I think I'm generally like a pretty anxious person, or very like, I think a lot, I analyze a lot. I'm very like, everything's kind of like activating to me, and I
Yeah.
feel like I think like Aubrey Plaza said this, something like this, or I got this vibe from her. I don't know. She said something like, um, everything makes me anxious, or everyone makes me anxious and uncomfortable. So like act I'm gonna make people anxious and uncomfortable instead. Like it's just like such a weird response to like being so anxious about everything, that I was like, I could kind of do that too. Like if everything scares me, then I can just like confront every single thing and just like be kind of force my way through this. Because yeah, I don't want to let like my own nervousness stop me from like something that could be a good time. A lot of times it is like, can be negative or like difficult to get through, because then I end up in a lot of situations where I'm like, I'm not playing to my strengths, I'm playing to my kind of like the edge of my fear. And so I'll have to like reevaluate and pull back and engage in things that I know, like, okay, I'm comfortable with this, I'm good with this. Um, and a lot of times, like my relationships or friendships are that kind of thing that when I pull back at the end of the day, we can be kind of that like shelter for each other, that place where it's like, okay, you fought a bunch of people, you got up on stage today, you talked to people that you didn't know, but at the end of the day, like, let's come together and like eat dinner and tell each other we love each other, and like it all kind of washes away.
Yeah, that makes sense. That seems really good. Like, do you find that, hmm, I'm kind of the same way with like being like everything makes me anxious, and I find that sometimes things that make other people who are not normally anxious really stressed out, I don't have so much of a problem doing as they do because
Mhm.
I'm so freaked out by everything that it's like it doesn't register as being any worse. Do you find it's sort of like that?
Yeah, and I kind of feel like I'm so used to the anxious feeling even when just like sitting that when it happens, like when I get on stage, I'm extremely nervous and fearful, but it doesn't show because I'm so practiced in just being like, okay, well, I feel horrible, but let's just like, well, how do you act normal in a situation like this?
Yeah,
So
no, I totally get
especially
that.
if there's some sort of like goal or objective and like then I can just put all of that anxious energy toward the goal and objective and then like, oh, you're like really good at this. And I'm like, well, that's just because I was trying to avoid thinking about how fast my heart was beating or I'm shaking, you know?
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. It's really funny. So do you like find that you do you like to it sounds like it's really nice to have yeah like a partner and friends and stuff to come home to like unwind after you've gone out and done all this like shit that would terrify other people and that stresses you out. Do you also like to do you prefer to have partners that do these types of things with you as well, or is it kind of nice to have somebody mostly to hang out with at home?
Um, I would say like it doesn't matter to me too much whether the person I'm with does the same like types of things as long as they have something going on because the relationships I've had where it hasn't worked out as well have been where I'm doing all this stuff and I have this kind of like ebb and flow to my life and they maybe are more relaxed, laid back, like they don't do too much and they prioritize, relaxation, all this stuff. And then when I come home, either it can make them kind of like jealous about like, oh, you're doing all this stuff and like I have nothing and kind of like that dynamic,
Yeah.
or they can be kind of like not understanding why I would want to do any of these things and just kind of like tempting me back, like, oh, come relax with me more, like let's
Oh
stay
no.
home more. And I'm like, no, like I can't do that. I have stuff to do. But I really admire it when someone, even if it's something completely different from me, has their own thing going on, their own goals, their own um, yeah, the things that they're heading for and that they like to do, so that we can have that feeling of okay, we're like kind of a power couple, or maybe not necessarily like power couple in the sense that we do everything together, but like power couple in the sense that we are both individually like powerful, committed, engaged to life, but like or engaged with life, but then can have that safety in each other as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems like either you're out adventuring together, which is really cool, or you're adventuring separately and then you get to talk about it when you come home. But I could totally see it being like a drain if there's somebody who doesn't have their own stuff going on and is either like relying on you to bring the entertainment to them or like doesn't want you to be. Yeah, that's okay, that's
Yeah.
cool. So somebody like pretty like at least socially active or with interests and things like this, other than presumably like staying home and playing games and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, even playing games is like fine as long
Yeah.
as that, like, as long as they have something interesting to say about that or whatever. Like, it can be as simple as, like, oh, I watched this movie today and here's what I thought. But, like, the idea of someone engaging with something else and then us, like, bonding over it, that's, like, what makes me most excited rather than just, like, oh, I don't really have anything, bring me all this stuff to talk about and think about, and you're shouldering the burden for like the life and the relationship, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like there's some introverted hobbies where you can actually engage with them, and then some where it's almost like you're just dissociating into them and trying to avoid living, which makes it a lot harder to share stories and interact. Do you find that like yeah, what have your best relationships been like versus like what kinds of things do you find make for a really good pairing versus a bad one for you?
I think the best pairing, um, and I guess is kind of what I've already been saying, but
Mm.
I guess to state it more clearly, like my best relationship was one basically where we could sit and talk to each other for like ever. And for the first, I would say like 3 years of our relationship, we didn't like ever watch Netflix or like just sit around like,
Wow.
or we were always like doing something or talking about something or going somewhere. I mean, part of it was like a lot of it was in college, and so there was a lot of stuff to
Yeah.
do. And when that kind of fell away, it, you know, got a little bit more stale.
Mm.
And yeah, I don't expect that level of connectivity to sustain over years and years, but at least like at our baseline, if we find ourselves going away from that and getting complacent, then being like, okay, do we want to like, spend a few weeks being complacent and being fine, sitting around doing nothing and achieving nothing, or do we want to change it up? So I'd say that's like the best relationship when we have that engagement. And if that engagement like falls away, being willing to talk about it and like prioritize like having that excitement in both of our lives and wanting to improve each other, improve ourselves through it, and just be able to have that like continuous growth and action and like lack of stagnancy.
Mm.
I would say like my worst were would be the opposite of that, where it kind of started and ended with, okay, well, um, let's just not do anything, or worse, when someone would actively like sabotage something I was trying to do.
Oh,
Like if
jeez.
my biggest pet peeve, or not pet peeve, I feel like it's a serious
Yeah.
red flag, is like if I'm, with someone and I have something going on like an hour later, and then they're like, oh, just be late for it for me. And I'm like, no, we're done. Like, not, I mean, not usually that extreme,
Yeah.
but most of the time that has been a signal for later on, they expect me to give up like huge parts of myself just to sit with them. And I'm like, I like you, I like sitting with you, but also if you're taking everything away from me that I've built, I've spent so much time building, and that matters to me so much, then it's like, do you really love me, or do you really love just like holding me in a little container and looking at me? Because I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, that's not, you just took away everything that made me me. It's confusing. Yeah.
Have you lived with anybody before?
Yeah, so I was in a serious relationship that ended. I mean, it slowly ended over time. It's like
Mm.
very um complicated, and I feel like if someone's scared off by the level of complication that I have like tolerance for in a relationship, then they might not be right for me. But yeah, we basically like officially truly ended like in October when I moved here.
Oh, wow.
But I did I was with him for on and off like 7 years, and so those last like 3 years we lived together, part of the time with other roommates and then part of the time just us.
Mm.
um, and I really liked it. I think I'm like easy to live with in the sense that like I have a high tolerance for like a lot of stuff in the home. Like I don't mind if someone's like messy or loud or like, comfortable in their home or whatever. Um, and also it's best if the person I'm living with has the same tolerance for me, where it's just like, I'm so focused on a lot of stuff outside the home, to where the home itself is not like my priority,
Mm.
in terms of making it a certain way. It's just like, okay, if we have a bed, we can be together. That's kind
Nice.
of my
Almost like a
prayer.
pit stop.
Yeah, and like it doesn't matter like what size it is or whatever, or like
Mm.
if there's a lot of roommates around, that's cool. If it's just us, that's cool.
Okay.
If there's pets, it depends, I guess. I had a cat, but um, yeah, I'm like kind of flexible in terms of like living, and I wouldn't say like I'm difficult to live with in that sense.
Yeah, sounds like you're pretty easygoing about that. I was going to ask about things like how much like cleanliness and orderliness and all of that matters. It sounds like it's not a huge deal, probably.
Yeah, and I can be kind of like I don't know. It's not that I'm opposed to it. Like if someone's like, "Oh, I expect a level of cleanliness that's different," then I'm like, "Okay, like for you, I will
Yeah.
try my best to do this." I'm very like agreeable, but just left to my own devices, like I don't even want to pan around the room right. But
No, I understand.
I'm like,
I'm showing a very narrow. This is my boyfriend's place actually, and it's like we're probably equally messy, but it gets really bad when we're both in the same place. Yeah, so you're not allergic to any pets or anything, and are you like down in theory to have them? It sounds like.
yes. I mean, I had a cat. She's now with my ex, so they are in love, and I am the best. They're doing great. Um, she's happier than ever, but um, yeah, I'm not. I do have like a lot of like random allergies,
Mm.
like low level irritation. I don't know. I went to the allergist. They're like, whoa, like a lot of stuff is very like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, like I don't know what's going on. So it's not like I'd be like, if someone already has a pet, then that's not like a problem. But like getting a pet together, if that's something that someone's like looking for and is important to them, I think that's like something that would need to be discussed. Where it's like, do I want to accept another animal into my life that I'm not quite sure if I'm allergic to cats or
That
not?
totally makes sense. Oh, yeah. Okay. So you said that you're. Oh, actually, no. There's like actually a lot of things to ask about. Okay. Well, you mentioned that your parents were like really supportive about the theater thing and like actively tried to like get you into it. Do you have a fairly good relationship with them?
Yeah, I would say it's not like the closest relationship like that you could ever have. It's not like we're, sending memes in the group chat, which honestly I would like, but I can't complain with what I have. Like my parents are, very happily together. They kind of have the sort of relationship that I talk about where my mom has like a lot of stuff going on and my dad has a little less going on. Like sometimes he'll call me if my mom's out of town, like, okay, like I don't know
Oh.
what to do. I'm just looking at the stars. I'm like, cool. So that's kind of funny. But yeah, they're like good people. I feel like part of what affects my relationship with them is that I was adopted when I was born, and so I have a lot of like, there's a lot of nuance around how that has affected things for me. But overall, I do feel like me and them are kind of different people at our core in like big, important ways. I think I have a lot more like thoughtfulness and intensity, and they have a lot more like they're at peace with the way life is, and they always have been. Like few kind of huge problems that they're like angsting over. Um, but overall, I think as an adult, we finally learned how to like not bridge the gap, but just kind of like find humor in the other thing, like them being like, "Oh, you're always like doing you're so much," and
Yeah.
me just being like laughing when they say something silly. It's just kind of ideal. And they're back in California. They visit me. They've already visited me twice,
Oh wow.
or they're gonna come visit me for
Yeah.
the second time next week because they are like, oh, we kind of want to move here now that you're over here. I'm like, oh gosh.
That'd be too much. They want to hang out all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, that's the thing. I'm like, I do have a lot of stuff going on, so to be, oh, sorry, I have to like go hang out with my mom and like do whatever with her, kind of like harshing my vibe. But, on the other hand, I'm like thankful that I do have, good supportive parents in my life who at the end of the day, like they do anything for me. So I'm lucky.
That's great. Did like does it matter too much or is it important to you that they get along with whoever you date or approve of them, I guess?
um, I think it's not the most important in the sense that I don't think I think it would be extremely uh, strange for them if I really liked someone for them to not approve. Like they've accepted a lot of situations where they're like, "Well, I don't know about this person, but
Nice.
go ahead." It would be like important for my partner to understand, especially if there was something like, I mean, if they were like the same sex, like then I would have to talk to my parents and like I would be on my partner's side because
Mhm.
being on my partner's side is like being on my own side because I'm choosing them. It's
Yeah.
not like my parents are choosing them, but to have like a little bit of leeway where it's instead of like, oh, I can't believe you aren't already out and proud or whatever about this. Or like if there was like a significant age difference, if they didn't understand, like, I can see why maybe your parents would raise an eyebrow at first or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah, but it's almost like the your partner's the priority, and your parents are chill enough that it's not likely to be any conflict anyway. Kind
yeah. I mean, hopefully, but if I had to choose, then that would be sad. But that I don't anticipate that being the case. But
Yeah, because I know some people. It's like their parents' opinion is like the most important thing, and that feels like
yeah,
important to figure out when you're like deciding who to date and stuff, or like if I'm trying to set people up, I guess.
yeah.
Yeah, does it much matter to you what sort of relationship you would have with a partner's family? Like, would you want to your families be pretty integrated, or is it kind of like whatever works out is fine?
Yeah, I would say whatever works out is fine. I think when I'm with someone, I generally get along with their family, and so if that's important to them, like they're looking for someone who will like go to their family parties or like just be cool and chill around their family and not cause huge issues. That's definitely something that I liked in the past. Like in my best relationships, I did have a I wouldn't say like super super close with their family, but they knew me and they considered me to be invited to the Thanksgivings and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And so definitely don't mind that, but it's not like a
Mhm.
deal breaker.
Oh yeah, actually for holidays and stuff that can be. Do you tend to like alternate holidays, or do you like do you and your partner hit every family kind of?
It wasn't in the past. It wasn't too complicated because the only partner where that was a concern, like we both lived in California.
Mm.
But yeah, it was kind of more of an alternating thing, or whoever's family places more importance on the holiday. Like um, his family would have like a really big Thanksgiving, whereas ours was smaller. But we had Christmas because we were like more Catholic or whatever. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh yeah, actually, so is religion, politics, this type of thing, any of these things important to you?
I would say I'm I'm generally just against like extremism and in all of its forms.
Mhm.
I'm very much like middle of the road on everything, like even like spirituality. Like I'm really into astrology and tarot, but then I'm like not really into organized religion. Like
Mhm.
I have that, or like politically, there are things. I mean, even just like race, like I'm mixed race, and so like I'm literally exist on two opposite sides of a huge issue.
Mhm.
Um, so like stuff like that, where it's just hard for me to even be in that space of like I will stand my ground on this political issue. And while I admire people who do have like strong convictions, I don't really. And if they like, um, and I would ideally want a partner who like respects the fact that I don't exactly like pick a side on a lot of things or like am fine with talking about a lot of things rather than a partner who feels like, okay, if you don't hold this opinion, then you're a bad person or you're stupid or whatever.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, that makes sense. So like it's maybe okay if they have kind of extreme opinions as long as they don't like have to rope other people into it, kind of.
yeah, yeah.
That makes
Or
sense.
um, yeah, I also think there's a difference between like holding extreme opinions in private and like talking about them with family and friends versus like making that their identity or a
Yeah.
central part of who they are, which again is fine, but it's just like that person probably wouldn't like me either because they're like, well, she doesn't care about this really important issue one way or another. So,
Do you find that makes like finding good friends difficult at all? I'm curious because I find yeah, I've had kind of I've I don't know, gone through like odd political phases and stuff, and now I'm sort of in the middle of the road thing and I'm like scared a little bit of meeting new
yeah.
people for this reason.
Yeah, I think especially if you go to places where there is extremism, whether it's like a big coastal city versus like, the middle of nowhere, like it's hard to make friends in those settings. Uh yeah, it has made me like a little scared. At some points I'm just kind of like, well, if they don't like it, I don't like I don't know then what. Like
Hell yeah.
it was gonna come up sooner or later. It definitely was a huge problem for me. Like when I don't know about now, but in the past when politics were like such a big thing with riots and COVID and all these like very hot button issues, um, very polarizing and like no one was on the same page and that made me retreat a lot into myself because I was just like, I don't even know how to say like that I would accept XYZ type of person into my life instead of like publicly flaming them or something.
Yeah,
So
right. It feels like in those periods it's like even socially unacceptable to just be like I'm fine with all of you.
yeah. Yeah, I think for me I prioritize like curiosity, discussion, like seeing where people come from and so to only focus on like debating the results instead of focusing on okay what would make someone be that way like even I think recently I said something about like QAnon where I was like I don't believe in QAnon. I'm not like a QAnon person or whatever, but I know people who are involved with it and from the people specifically that I know, anecdotal evidence, these are very empathetic people and it was like if you truly believe children were being abused or whatever, then it would make sense why you would want to make your whole life surrounded by how to make this, go away and how to hold the government accountable or whatever. But that like makes people mad when I even think about it like that. And I'm just like, well, I don't know. Am I supposed to just be like, all right, everyone sucks in the whole world? Like, that's not fun to me.
Yeah, it's rough that I don't know. It seems like people want to draw lines around like who you're allowed to empathize with.
Yeah. And I guess that's maybe one of my negative I don't know if it's a negative quality but it can go either way to where like I will be a very like whatever whoever's point of view I'm hearing like I can like understand it very well but then it's like I can step back and be like oh wait I should not like empathize with that person at all but like because I when I understand it I can like wrap my head around it and kind of sympathize at least for the moment with like a wide variety of things and that makes me like good to talk to like people can talk to me and know that I won't judge them but then on the other hand it can make me like a little spineless or whatever or like being on the wrong side of a situation sometimes because it's like I'm supporting the one person that no one else supports.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's relatable. Yeah, sometimes it feels like, I don't know, I feel almost more compelled if somebody has some kind of really outlier view that makes people hate them and it feels disproportionate. It makes me want to support them more. Almost like, even if it's like somebody I don't know very well against actual friends, which is not great, but it seems, I think it's a good thing. Like, I think
Yeah.
it's just very inconvenient and feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think there's a place for that in situations, especially like, I mean, online, especially,
Yeah.
but even in real life, big groups can be against one person. It can get
Yeah.
very,
Wait, so actually, I guess I should ask, how are you on Twitter much? How did you end up finding that tweet? Are you part of like a
oh,
tweet
yeah,
bot
I'm
or
on Twitter a lot.
it's surprising because you seem to touch grass pretty often.
I do, but like I'm touching grass, but like in my 40-minute ride on the subway, I'm like scrolling, and I have, especially since moving here, like I've prioritized trying to meet people in real life. If there's someone on the timeline that's interesting, I'm like, hey, want to get lunch or whatever. Like I've it's been good and bad. I've been ignored or engaged with or whatever, but I think overall I like using the internet as a way to connect, especially Twitter, because you can kind of get not an idea exactly, but you can kind of see generally what type of person this person is and like what kind of thoughts they choose to express
Yeah.
publicly.
How did you end up in this part of Twitter?
I honestly don't know. I was the kind of just like stuff. I'm glad that I did because my timeline used to be like so horrible. And then I think I'm trying to think of like who I know. I think in one case I did meet up with a girl who was also in San Francisco at the time. And because she had like SF in her bio, I think it like showed me other people with SF in their bio. And then I met up someone else. And then like when I went there, I went to like one of her parties and like followed some people from there. So just the algorithm was like, oh, okay, you know these people. I'm like, oh, sure, yeah,
Oh, that's
whatever.
awesome.
Yeah.
So do you find you get along pretty well with like all the tech type people, or are you finding more of the artsy people within our circles?
Um, I would say, I mean, I would like to get along with the tech type people, but I don't think I'm as I think I'm more like peoply, like creative,
Yeah.
spiritual rather than technical. And so I think sometimes I get along with them in the sense that like it's fun to have me around like once in a while, like just to make the conversation a little bit different than it would be. But then eventually they're like, all right, this she's talking too much, or like she's
Really? That's hard to imagine, honestly.
or she's like, I don't know, saying thing like she's like keeps bringing up astrology and like that's not logical. I'm like, okay, well, whatever, Libra man, whatever.
There's such like a serious split on astrology. I feel like among the people I know, people either like fucking hate it or they're like obsessed. And I feel like the
Yeah,
only person who's in the middle who's like, I don't really believe it, but I think it's kind of fun. So like, it's
yeah,
fun to hear
yeah.
about.
Yeah, I just, for me it's kind of just goes with that whole curiosity thing and understanding thing where it's like I get along best with people who are like, I wonder why someone would believe in astrology. Like, what do you find, it's done for you, or what do you find to be true about it, or whatever. And like, I have a lot of answers, and I could talk someone's ear off for for hours about it. But like, so many people just confront stuff like that with like, well, it's not logical. Like, it has been proven to be fake or whatever. Like, it's all just a projection or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, you just shut down like the whole conversation that we could have had, and you could have come away with it with something new, or I don't know. And that's like how I feel about if someone else mentions something that I don't agree with. I'm always like challenging myself to be like, okay, well, why do you feel that way, or like what have you experienced that has led you to that? And most of the time I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, actually. I'm more open to that than I thought I was. So
Okay, completely unrelated question. How do you feel about having children? Are you interested in having children or?
so children, it's always been like I've angsted over this for years, and not even in the way where it's like, oh, is it right to bring children in the world or whatever. I'm just like, for me personally, it's a very loaded topic, especially being like adopted, like having that thing where it's like the having something that's biologically related to you, that's a whole thing. The idea of like pregnancy and birth, like it scares me, but then on the other hand, I'm like, well, it could be like spiritually enriching to go through this. Like it's always been, it could go either way. And I read this book called The Baby Decision, that was basically like addressing all of these questions, um, helping you decide if you should become a parent. And by the end of the book, I decided, I mean, maybe this is predictable for me, but I was like, I literally could be completely happy either way. Like, because I think no matter what, I will have moments of extreme misery and I will have moments of extreme joy. And like, I don't think that I would reach the end of my life either way and have said, like, this was a bad decision.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like I would say I'm leaning more toward not having kids, at least at this point. I mean, I'm 26, so the whole like biological clock thing, I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah,
um,
I get
who knows?
that.
Or, like maybe it's just like, oh, I'll meet the right person or whatever. But yeah, I would say like if it's something where like I think I would also prefer someone who feels similarly like it could go either way. Like if it's someone's dream to be like a father or a mother, I don't think that it would be best for them to be with me because I'm like you should be with someone who really values like having that family. Or if they're like I would never consider having kids, then I feel like it would kind of make me be like, well, maybe we should then. If
Oh no, I
like,
totally
like
get that.
don't tell me what to do.
Yeah, I'm sort of like leaning, like left to my own devices, leaning no on kids, but like kind of open to it. But if a partner is like, no way, I'm like, well, I don't know about that. What if I
Yeah,
change my mind?
yeah. I also feel like one thing that maybe is like weird about me or something, but is that I think I would prefer to be with someone who already has kids or like even like young kids.
Mhm.
I think I would be like a good
Yeah.
stepmom. Like I don't know, like I just babies are again that's just like a loaded thing for me psychologically, I guess. But once they are like actual people and can say any words, I'm like, okay, I can handle this.
Yes. I totally get that. Yeah, it seems like you're like generally pretty open, but kind of also want to maintain some amount of options and like the freedom to make a bunch of interesting decisions basically. So it's good to
Yeah,
have someone who's similarly flexible and down to compromise and not necessarily somebody who's like going to take advantage of the openness and be like, "Well, this is how I want to live."
yeah.
I
It's
hate that.
it's a weird balance to try to strike. Like I guess not only just with kids, but in general, is like wanting someone who like values my openness and flexibility, but not in a way where it's like, well, now I can make her do whatever I want.
Yeah.
In a way where it's like, oh, now I can finally be like honest about how I feel. Now I can finally talk about everything that I was too scared to like discuss with other people, and we can actually come to a decision with all of the relevant knowledge that we've now shared with each other.
Yeah, that makes sense. Does it it seems like a lot of people sort of range from like some people are sort of uh more assertive, I guess, and like know what they want and like push for it and have a tendency almost to bowl people over if they don't have pretty strong boundaries or have strong preferences. And then there's the people who are sort of the opposite of this, where they're a little more passive and without some kind of prompting it's going to be hard for them to like make that many decisions. I imagine most people want somebody kind of in the middle, but do you find you
Mhm.
have more of a problem with one of these ends than the other?
um Yeah, I would say that I have more problem with people who are too assertive
Mm-hmm.
at this point. Like it's something that I've been really consciously working on because I'm like I need to learn how to stand up on my own and say no to things and say yes to things. And so it's always like a welcome challenge when I come across someone like that, but also um yeah, I would say I get along less with them because it's like often the preference like sometimes it's like okay the preferences come like from within me and it's very like their gut level is telling them something, but so many times someone will assert something and then I'll find out, oh, it's just because of like that's what your mom told you should do or whatever. Like it's just kind of like
Yeah.
they have to examine like why are they feeling so strongly about this thing. um
But yeah, like people who are just kind of by nature inflexible, even if they fundamentally don't care that much about the thing.
Yeah, and it will lead to like a strain in our relationship because then after a while I'll start to feel like kind of resentful, like, I've been saying I wanted to do this thing for years, and like your voice has been so loud that I haven't even been able to say it.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense. And does it sort of matter less if they're not that proactive, if they're open to, like if you suggest something and they're down for it, kind of? Or,
yeah, yeah, I'm like always good with, yeah, I'm good with like coming up with stuff to do or like having wants or whatever. But if someone's like, oh no, I'd rather like not do anything, then I'm like, okay, well, I'll do it alone. Like I'll go do it alone, but like don't
yeah,
be mad when I come back and I didn't, you know, do it with you, just that kind of thing.
yeah.
So yeah, if someone's like always down for things, like that's someone who, whether it's relationship or friendship or whatever, like we get along maybe too much to where it's like, okay, it's like 7 a.m. and we're still out, like let's go. That kind
That
of
seems like
thing.
a good failure mode. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all. Yeah. Um, yeah, so it seems like in conflict, then I don't know, some people get like really intense, right? When they get upset about things. It seems like you're more of a like talk it out, kind of chill type of person.
Yeah, I think I've grown like more tolerance for stuff like getting like very animated or cussing or like huge expressions of anger or being like mean to each other or whatever. Like I don't know, I feel like I've learned, not that it's okay, but like I've learned that so many people have that fighting style, so where I'm like kind of unrealistic to expect, maybe not unrealistic, but it's been hard to find someone who has
Oh.
the same expectations as me.
Or like have the people you've dated been kind of similar in terms of just I don't know, like have you noticed, yeah, I'm wondering if it's been kind of common for them to have outbursts a bit. Or are they similar in other ways, do you find?
I actually don't, honestly, like looking back, I wouldn't say like I've dated people who are particularly like super angry or have outbursts. I think I just had like such a low tolerance for it because I'm like very sensitive to
Mm.
like negative emotions. And like I used to have a rule like when I was 19. Well, I didn't say it wasn't like an official rule, but I was like, I won't, it was a boundary or whatever. I was like, if you cuss or like raise your voice, then I won't, like, we won't talk right now. Like, let's just come back to it later.
Mm.
Of course, I never like followed through on that. And I would always just be like, okay, well, I need to withstand this. But it was like, that's a kind of um, boundary that some people might find like, okay, well, just because I'm passionate, now you're like saying we have to be silent or whatever, just because I can't express myself as like neutrally as you. But overall, in conflict, I do like find it important, and I respect people the most who can, you know, do kind of what I try to do, which is like, this is someone that you supposedly love and care for. And even if you don't love them, like, they're still a person, and like, words matter, and the emotions we're directing at each other matter. And so the idea of just being like, well, they'll put up with it, so I'm going to just say anything, or like, we'll fix it later, or just like losing control completely because that's how upset you are, and like not holding back for the other person. That to me, like, I don't like that. That idea.
Right there with you. Yeah, it feels like some people take their like close relationships as license to like vent, and like I get that you should be able to express yourself and be
Mhm.
comfortable with the people you're closest to, but it feels sort of like, yeah, if you love each other, shouldn't you be treating them better than you would treat other people as opposed to being comfortable to treat them worse?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. How do you feel about like drinking, smoking, drug use, this type of thing?
um I'm good with it all.
Mhm.
Well, that's too much to say. Not,
Sure, yeah.
that's not true. Yeah, I don't
Full on
know.
heroin addiction.
I even lie. I mean, no. I mean, no. But again, I am like very accepting, non-judgmental.
Yeah.
So if someone struggled with certain things in the past, it's like that's part of them, whatever. That's a whole different moral stance. But for me, yeah, I personally drink like socially. I kind of have a rule for myself where I'm like, I don't drink alone, like in general.
Mm.
But if going to a bar alone isn't exactly alone, technically,
Yeah.
with my rule. So it's like stuff like that where it's like non problematic according to me and other people I know, but like I enjoy it. And if someone is against that, then it would probably be like a huge hindrance. I'm not like gonna, I don't think I could like give up alcohol completely for someone. In terms of like smoking and stuff, like cigarettes, um, I don't know. I've been like okay if someone vapes, but like the smell of smoke is like very tough for me, I guess. Like it gives me headaches and stuff. And so it would be like a thing where I don't know. It would be like a big question mark there. It's like this person better be worth it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like for me to have a headache around them all the
I
time.
don't think you have to be that tolerant. Somebody else can love them. It's fine.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. That's a good point. Other drugs like any like hallucinogens or is that what they're called? I don't know. Well, whatever.
Hallucinogens, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
pronounce it suddenly.
You're fine.
But but yeah, that's all good with me. I've engaged like very what's it called? Like intentionally or whatever every time. But if someone's casually taking them, that's fine too. If that like works for them. Um yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Just can't for me it's like I mean, I guess a reasonable boundary is like if it's interfering with your day-to-day life, if you like can't hold down a job or relationship or anything, then
Mhm.
yeah, then I don't know. I wouldn't want to
Yeah.
be part of that.
No, that makes sense. Oh, do you go to like festivals or anything like this at all?
Um, I went one time to like outside lands and I didn't like it because there were so many people and it was like so hard to get around. I would be open to going to like festivals and events though, but I'm also very like I like my creature comforts at the end of the day. Like people have been trying to convince me to go to Burning Man and I'm like, okay, but that's like a lot of dust and like it's okay, but
It's
I
so
don't know.
intense.
It'll be that being that dusty or like camping. I've never actually been camping, so that's like maybe a like I'd be open to camping with like a partner or whatever, as long as they can like be like, okay, we have a tent, we have this comfort. Like if we need to leave, we can leave. You know, not
Yeah.
being like "Hey, we gotta go out on this like adventure and scale walls and stuff." I'm like, I can't do that. You go do
12-hour hike, no
yeah.
toilets.
Yeah, I'm like, please do that with your hiking friend. Like, I'm perfectly
Yeah.
happy if you want to leave for 2 weeks or whatever
Mhm.
and like not talk to me at all. That's fine. As long as I don't have to personally go through.
Yeah, no, that seems good. Oh yeah, in general, like if you're especially early in dating, but maybe in general, like how do you feel about you're okay with just not talking every day? Would you prefer to talk every day or
Um, I guess it depends. I personally don't like talking just to talk, like where it's like, oh,
yeah.
send me good morning and good night every night, or else you don't care about me. I'm like, I don't think that's like necessary, and often it can feel like such an obligation to me where I'm like, well, now I don't even feel interested at all.
Mhm.
But I feel like talking, it happens very naturally for someone who is like interested in me and I'm interested in them. And I'd be like, okay with talking every day. I like hanging out a lot, especially if it's convenient. But like if someone can only hang out like once a week or once every 2 weeks, like that's okay, I guess. But it would be it after a while. It's kind of hard to build like a super close
Yeah.
relationship with that. But like I can work with it schedule wise or whatever. Um, I'm not super like clingy or not clingy. That's like a negative word, but
You're right.
you know,
No, I,
super. I don't
I'm
require
clingy, so I
a lot
accept it.
of togetherness to feel like close to someone. I think it's like the quality of the time um, and the quality of the conversation that makes me like most excited about someone.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's almost more about like the content rather than just sort of signaling and reassurance. That's a bit
Yeah.
unnecessary. Yeah. Oh, okay. I guess I should probably ask like views on things like birth control and abortion because that there occasionally are
Mhm.
conflicts there.
Yeah, I have a lot of opinions on birth control. Like it was like such a battle for me for like a long time in my life. Basically, like I cannot be on birth control in any form. Like even people like, oh, the IUD, but like I've like a serious medical phobia that I've been working on for years and years, and I just can't. That's just not. That's like my big boss. Like if I were to
Same.
ever get an IUD, it would be like you're cured of like a literal lifelong
Yes.
uh, severe. Yeah, it's rough out here to be the ones who have to overcome that.
It's like
Uh,
having something like inside you for a long period that in theory could get fucked up in some catastrophic way that you can't really deal with by yourself
yeah,
is so terrifying.
yeah, in a sensitive, very sensitive area,
Yeah.
and all just for the other person's sake. Most, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's for me like I do think a lot of opinions on birth control, or like the way that someone deals with like me not being on birth control and like the conversations around that, like it always makes me feel so much more comfortable and like open to anything once as long as they are not pressuring in any direction. Like, and once they start pressuring me, or if they're like, oh, just get back on it, I'm like, you heard my whole, like, I talked to you for like 6 hours straight about like how it literally ruined my life physically, mentally, emotionally, like spiritually, all this stuff. And still being like, well, but I don't like condoms. I'm like, okay, well, we could have talked about some other option. There's so many ways to prevent it. But now that you're like saying that I should forget about any of my experiences just for you, like, now I don't want to do it at all. It's like
Yeah.
I'm very like I can be kind of hot button triggered on
It feels
that.
like a really good boundary to have though, because it's just somebody being like dismissive for what for them is very low stakes, and for you it's very high stakes, and it's like the
Yeah.
bare minimum. It feels it's like not even a big ask. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I get it. Like pleasure is
yeah,
very important, but it's also like we can't even get to that point of discussing that when you're just saying like, well, I don't care like what happens to you basically, and then it's like, well, God forbid something unintended happened when I was with you, and then you're immediately making that decision for me without making me think about it, whatever.
mm,
But but in terms of like abortion and stuff, I do. That is one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I think that's my decision. I think I would tend toward, like toward doing it early or whatever. But yeah, I would not want to be with someone who like I can empathize with like not empathize like I can understand the emotional pain and like the difficulty that would come with that decision. That's something like within our relationship that I would definitely want to talk about and whether, but I'm like at the end of the day, like I am will probably fall back on practicality and like intention and all that and would go through with the abortion. So
what sorts of shows of affection, I guess, do you generally appreciate, and what do you sort of naturally give to people?
I think naturally I give to people like well actually let me rewind. I guess I'll think first about what I like.
Sure.
I feel most loved when I'm given attention. I guess like quality time would be the good one, but again, that's not amount of time. That's like when we are together, how together are we, or like what are we doing? Um, I also do like, um, yeah, I feel like that's kind of it. Like I don't for me, that's my biggest one.
Yeah.
Um,
So like, if they forget Valentine's Day, like not a huge deal, kind of thing, or
Honestly, I mean, yeah, in the past, I've been in relationships where it's like they didn't like forget Valentine's Day, but like it wasn't super important to me. I would like it, but I just feel like certain things like acts of service and gifts. Maybe this is like a personal issue, but for me, a lot of the time it can feel like an obligation, whereas like quality time feels like very much an exchange for me. But then when someone's like giving gifts, then I'm like, well, I got to get them a
Yeah.
better equal gift, or else they're gonna feel like I don't love them or something. And like I can be very like thoughtful and like giving and all that stuff, if I'm given the space, and like if I have gift ideas or if I have service ideas or whatever,
Yeah.
you know. But when it feels like an obligation, then I'm like, no, I'm not. I cannot do this at all.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I would say like giving. I would say I'm one of those people who I do kind of sometimes show my affection through like not exactly like gifts, but giving resources, like whether it's like I guess time is a resource, but like money, even not like giving them money
Sure.
directly. Honestly, like if I got to that position where I could, like that would be my thing. I'd be like, here's, your monthly allowance. Like that would be my ideal
Nice.
situation here. But a girl can dream about being a millionaire. But yeah, I do like I like the idea of like here's something that's mine and now it can be yours.
Mhm.
So whether that's yeah, like money, like paying for their dinner or whatever. I don't know. Yeah, and I would say words of affirmation is the one that I have the most trouble with,
Mhm.
um, because I don't. People have like criticized me about like the way you express love is very like it's very concrete through like time and energy and physical stuff, but not words. Like I can't write those like flowery love letters or whatever, like make any big claims because I'm like I don't say anything that isn't true, and so I can't just like if I don't naturally feel like our love is two planets colliding and like but I don't even know. I'm like being rude now toward like romance, but I could never describe anything that way. So if someone's like, oh, I feel like you don't love me because you don't like affirm me with this, or even saying something like really nice to someone, like I'll give good compliments, I think, when I feel them,
Yeah.
but I'm not naturally like encouraging verbally unless I feel inspired occasionally. So
Yeah. Like you don't need a lot of reassurance and it doesn't feel natural for you to give people a lot of reassurance kind of or like not
yeah,
empty reassurance but just kind of rote almost.
yeah. I mean, I like in terms of reassurance, if it's like put that way, it's more of a like thing where it's like, oh, like I'm sad, and they're
Mm.
like, hang in there, and I'm like, okay, cool, like being like, I love you, and I'm like, okay, that's enough for me. It doesn't have to be like, thinking about our entire relationship and how inspiring you've been over the year. I'm
Yeah.
just like, I don't need all that really. Just like give me a hug and let's like go out eat dinner,
Yeah, yeah.
so.
How do you feel about like travel? Do you like to go abroad or anything like this? Is it important to you to do this with a partner?
I honestly don't I don't think I like to travel that much. Like I used to be like, oh, like it's such a dream to travel everywhere, but I'm like, I don't know. I feel like kind of what we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation, like due to having like so much anxiety about stuff, like I do like being in familiar places or like having that place to like return back to at the end of the day and like a safe space. And I just feel like it's so hard to find that when you're traveling around. I guess it'd be different if it's like, we're going to travel to visit someone in particular and we know like who they are or whatever. We have like a landing pad, or we're going to see this specific thing, a pilgrimage to go see like this musical or something, like I don't know,
That
or
makes
like
sense. Yeah.
the Shakespeare Festival, whatever, that kind of thing. Like I like that with a purpose and with kind of like something to ground it, but just being like, let's just go anywhere and see, like, let's see if we can survive in this foreign country and like no, I don't. Then I'm just like don't want to do anything and I'm too scared. So
Plus, you like live someplace where there's infinite stuff to do, so there's less pressure, I guess.
exactly. Although I feel like a lot of people do like travel a lot here, and I'm just like, you don't like it here, like
Yeah, right. Do you
more.
um do you feel like you want to settle in New York long term, or like how do you feel about, I guess, long distance relationships or potentially meeting somebody out of state?
Um, I would be open to it, to like long distance. Um, I would eventually like to close the gap. And I would say I'm not attached to New York City in particular, but I think I am like at heart a very like civilization city girl. Like I have no desire to live rurally at all. Like I do like a lot of constructed spaces and culture. I love cute little bars and restaurants and theaters and like going to places with names and faces. I don't know.
No, I get that. Yeah.
I've described it like that before, but like some people are like, I just want a quiet, laid back, calm life
Mm.
where I can, build with my family. I'm like, no, that's not what I want. I would be fine with like always living in like a very small room with like no property of my own, if it means that I'm like close to some cute cocktail bars or something. Maybe that sounds silly, but
No,
that's just
I get that.
like where I'm at at
Yeah.
this point. So if they were like, in LA or something like, and we really connected over time and decided we want to go there, like that's
Mhm.
fine with me because it's like a city or whatever. But if they're kind of like, I kind of live somewhere else where there's not much going on, I'd be like, I don't know.
Not so
That'll work
much moving
for
to
me.
Cleveland.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to ask, what do you work? What do you do generally, or
So that's kind of again, that's a good question. So I used to back like before COVID, I lived in LA and I had like three different jobs and all of them I lost all of them
oof.
in the same day or whatever. Yeah.
Oh.
So me and the person I was dating at the time, me and him went up to the Bay Area. Um, because that's where his dad's business was, and I kind of like worked for them a little bit, but then and like tried to get other jobs, but then ultimately it was like I need something more stable to like that I won't lose and that I can actually do, because who knows how long this will last. So I went into medical coding,
Oh.
which is like like reading medical records and like translating them into insurance codes. But what I didn't realize about that job was like while I would make a consistent hourly wage, like it's a very kind of simple job. It was like so repetitive and it was work from home mostly and just like working on a factory floor, but with
Yeah.
the work cues and just like that's just not using any skill or anything that I have. And so for like the past 2 years when I've been in that profession, I think like probably my bosses think I'm like the worst employee. Like I would constantly be like reprimanded like every single week. They're like, "You're not doing a good job. You're not good
Jeez.
at this," which is sucks because I'm like, there's a lot of things I am actually good at. Like I'm not a horrible employee. I'm actually very dedicated and committed. But because I can't focus on this like repetitive task over and over, I don't find it like soothing or security inducing or whatever. Like I just hate it. I did get let go from my job 2 weeks ago or
Oh,
3 weeks.
rough. Okay,
So
yeah.
I'm like brand new to unemployment. I'm having a great time.
Nice.
And luckily, because of the way that I operate, I did like build up a very solid savings for years. And that was important to me where I'm like, I hate this job, I'm suffering, but I want to have it so that when I do ultimately lose this job, because it's not going to last forever for me, that I will have that cushion. And so now I'm in the cushion and trying to figure out what's next. I do like having a routine and like having stuff to do. So I've, I do have a plan to get my next job, like even if it's something I don't really like, just in like the next month. But right now I'm mostly just like rehearsing for plays and
That's awesome.
acting. Yeah. So kind of chaotic, but like because my mind is always on like security on a foundational level, I feel like lucky to have the freedom to weather any career transitions and like possibly even at some point like very soon to make like different moves with my career, mainly trying to get more into like not exactly the mental health field, although maybe like I'm trying to decide if I want to become a therapist or if there's like some other like more non-traditional routes that I like to take. Um, because I have like some disagreements with the current mental health field, so we'll see.
Yeah, I get that. I feel like I had maybe two more questions, one of which I forgot, so that's great. But the other one was, do you have like a physical type or any like types of people that you're more into or less into?
Yes. I would say sorry. I have like some broad things and some like specific things, but I'm just like I always surprise myself too with like it's just like someone's not your physical type, but you're into them. So like generally I'm pretty open, but at a baseline, like vaguely, I am like much more attracted to people who invest a lot in their appearance in some way or always, whether it's like um through like the gym and like eating, whatever, like just being physically fit and healthy. Like I am very into people who are who are like really fit. Um but also it's like if you don't have that, okay, but at least like dress cool, or like I just want there to be like often some like visual impact. It's I don't think it's like, or I think it could be shallow or vain, but I'm like, I don't know, I want to like look cool when we're walking down the street or
Hell
whatever,
yeah.
and I want to like enjoy, like really enjoy looking at you if I'm gonna do it all the time. um
No,
so
this makes sense. This feels
yeah.
reasonable.
And then in return, I also like do that. Like I go to the gym a lot, not a lot, but like
Well, jujitsu
enough
is like a
to,
lot of
yeah,
exercise.
yeah.
Yeah.
Although over time, it actually gets to be like less exercise than you think, and you have to be like careful not to, rely on it too much. But yeah, it is a lot of gym time. I like upkeep my appearance. I care about how I look most of the time. So yeah, that's just like I think the effort is like what like vaguely my type is. um yeah, I guess there's like, I mean, a lot of specific things, uh but that's just like wishful thinking
Are there
sometimes.
things that are like, oh, if this person has this feature or has this type of vibe or something that's like that sometimes like overrides other considerations or
Yeah, sometimes if someone like has long hair, like if
oh.
either like if like it's a woman and she has like especially long hair, or if it's a man and he has long hair, I'm just like, okay, I need to like imagine if they were bald, would I still like them? I'm like, okay, maybe, but like it's mostly the hair and I'm being like distracted.
I get
But
that.
um um yeah, yeah, that's a big thing. But if someone has no hair or short hair, if they have short hair and they can grow it longer, I would be like, have you ever thought about it?
Mm-hmm.
But if they have no hair, then okay, we can work from the baseline.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not just that too. It's like there's, yeah, a lot of other things.
Yeah. Or like what? Or I mean, you don't have to talk about it, but
Oh, yeah, I didn't. I mean, I guess the physical fitness is
mm.
the big one. But yeah, I don't. I was trying to think like height or anything. I'm like I don't even know. I'm like also I'm five. Well, I think I'm 5'8", but people are like, "Are you sure you're not 5'10"? I'm like, why? How would I not know? I don't
Tall
know.
presence.
I guess, yeah, it's, people say I give off like a tall, statuesque, giraffe-like aura.
Rude. Statuesque is good though.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good one. I always like that one. I'm like, thank you.
Nice.
I am statue. Um, but yeah, I don't mind like height at all. But I do have a problem if someone's like shorter and they're like a guy and they're like really insecure about it and always have to bring it up.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this is a problem because we can't change this. And also, I wear heels almost all the time. Not like super high, but I'm like, they're like 2 inches or so.
Yeah.
Maybe people think I'm 5'10. Just put it together.
That's fair.
But yeah, I think it's just like being confident in whatever you have and like emphasizing your positive qualities, and like someone who has good taste and knows how to emphasize those things and like be proud of what they have, is attractive to me.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it almost sounds like is it more important kind of that they have like a yeah like taste and sort of an aesthetic point of view than like as opposed to being somebody who like doesn't have their own personal taste really but is down to be dressed up and doesn't mind too much wearing stuff that you like.
Yeah, I mean, there have been situations where like most of the time if someone dates me, they like mysteriously become very fashionable, whether it's
Blow up.
like stuff for them
That's
or
cool.
they're like, okay, I'm sick of wearing basketball shorts and a ripped t-shirt when I'm going out with this girl who's like obviously carrying a lot.
Mm.
Um yeah, so I would say like I would almost rather have someone who is like less physically attractive but dresses and adorns themselves and like has a haircut and all this stuff that they put a lot of thought into,
Mm-hmm.
rather than someone who's like generically very very hot but like doesn't care at all what they wear,
Okay.
um, or like how they come across, like even I don't know, even if someone's like I prefer minimalist aesthetic, I want that to be like intentional, you know.
Yeah. There's ways to make minimalism like clearly intentional and look really good as opposed to just like yeah I'm wearing this shirt that my mom bought me because I've never shopped in my life.
Yeah, and it also doesn't even have to be like I think especially with like guys, you know, a lot of guys aren't into fashion, whatever, that's fine. But even if they have like one thing where they have like a cool necklace that they wear sometimes, or
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know, there's a favorite color that they have, like that'll be enough. You know, it
Yeah.
doesn't take much, but it's just like showing that you like are aware that you have a body and would like to present it
Mm-hmm. Like some
in some
level of
way.
like self-expression or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're thinking about meeting somebody you might be interested in, is it sort of a casual like yeah I'll go on a first date with anybody, or is it sort of like you want to interact with them a bunch first and kind of like vet them or get a sense if there's chemistry beforehand?
Um, I will go on a date with anybody. Like, I actually really like going on dates and meeting people for the first time.
Based.
The energy is like always very interesting because it's like so much discovery. Um, and I don't know, I always have a fun time, but I feel like my strongest attractions, I guess probably this is normal, but like my strongest attraction usually occurs if like I see someone over a long period of time doing something in particular. Like the biggest thing for me, like even if I were to like meet someone through online or something, like seeing a video of them like singing, or like I don't know, seeing like a presentation they gave, or like I don't, yeah, even looking at their LinkedIn profile and seeing like their comments or something, like just like random stuff where it's like I see them doing something in the world that isn't, it's not necessarily like trying to woo a woman, or like, you know, they're not
Right.
doing it for anyone. It's just kind of like, here is me like displaying who I am. You know, they have a big art project or, you know, coding website or whatever. Then I'm like, that's what makes me interested in someone. And like, that's what can kind of build my end of the chemistry and interest. But yeah, I would also be open if someone has like no online presence, no present, nothing to show for anything,
Mhm.
and still wants to like hang out with me. I'd be like, okay, well, let's see you know.
That's neat. Yeah.